Everybody, welcome to the show. Round the Nation right here, TYT Nation. Jeff Waldorf with you. Got a great show for you guys today. We've got more on Roy Moore and how the Republicans are planning to deal with this guy in case he wins. They're kind of freaking out a little bit. Sean Hannity tells his viewers to stop destroying their coffee machines. That's fun. We've got that video. Then we're going to talk about, of course, the GOP tax plan that came out of the Senate. Somehow they took a bill that was already super slanted towards the rich and made it worse. I've got the details on that. Then we've got CEOs, of course, responding to how they feel about the tax plan and whether or not they're going to create jobs. You guys already know how it's going to turn out, but nonetheless, we've got that video and that story for you today. We also have millionaires pushing back against the tax bill. That's fun. And then finally, we're going to talk ghost hunting. Yeah, it's a political story. So it's definitely related to a Trump pick. But again, very interesting. Ron Placone, of course, I did say he was going to be on the show today. I misspoke because he's actually going to be on the show tomorrow. He got a hold of me after the show yesterday and was like, "Hey, man, let's do normally Wednesdays, but let's do Thursday." Okay. Hey, so Ron Placone, tomorrow we'll have him on the show, and we'll have some great stories about, of course, corruption in the Democratic Party. So, all right. With that said, before I get into the show, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Thank everybody for watching or listening over on FYNation.com. If you could, please give us a like and a share if you haven't already. Thank you. I appreciate that. That helps the show. Obviously, it helps out a lot to get us discovered. As far as helping out the show, you can do Super Chat, which has two different functions. What it does is that it elevates comments. So you can leave a comment, and it also goes to help the show. So that's pretty cool. Another way to help the show, patreon.com/TYTNation. I've got a couple of names that I want to read. Kevin Broom, No Alternative, and Jenny Wu. Thank you, Kevin, No Alternative, and Jenny Wu for supporting TYT Nation on Patreon, patreon.com/TYT Nation. All right. Again, that helps us continue to stay on the air, and it helps us grow. So, let's jump into the story. We've got, of course, like I said, Roy Moore. All right. Republicans have a Roy Moore problem. Now, currently, he is up 6 points in the polling against Democrat Doug Jones, despite both the sexual assault and molestation accusations from 5 different women. All right. So this whole thing is creating a huge issue for sitting Republicans who have decided, we need to distance ourselves from Moore. And, of course, that issue would be, what happens if Alabama voters decide they're going to send an accused pedophile to Congress? They can't really control what their voters do. And they can say, hey, man, don't vote for Roy Moore. Or, hey, maybe we need to ask for Roy Moore to step down. They can't get him off the ballot, by the way. It's too close to an election. So whether or not he steps down, he'll still be on the ballot. Okay, so that's very interesting. So there's literally nothing they can do. Now, if Alabama voters decide, hey, you know what? We're going to stick with our boy. I don't care what he did or what the fake news media is trying to say that he did. We're with Moore because he believes in traditional values like dating really, really young girls. Okay. Now, here's my read of the situation, right? So he's still up 6 points in the polls, despite all this stuff breaking, all this news. I think he's going to win. He only lost 4 points. since this happened. And look, there are numerous Alabama politicians that have affirmed their support for Moore. There's a couple that have been like, maybe not such a good choice. We're going to kind of backpedal a little bit, but mostly he's gotten a lot of support from people in Alabama, from not only the voters, but from the politicians as well. I mean, at the very least, they're setting up a race to be a sort of lesser of two evils, right? It's kind of insane when you think that an accused child molester is, to some people, less evil than a Democrat. Okay? So like I said, a lot of congressional Republicans have cut ties to Roy Moore. That includes Ted Cruz, Mike Lee, and others. And of course, the RNC itself has eliminated its joint funding agreement with the Moore campaign. Now, that's interesting, but ineffective, because look, it's a high-profile race now. It's got national attention, but like less than a month from the race, well, Roy Moore has all the attention he could ever need and all the support he could ever need. In fact, he's fundraising off the allegations, calling them a liberal smear. That is, of course, interesting because he's got a documented past of creepy behavior. But nonetheless, no, that's what he's going with. Oh, no, it's liberal smear. They're making all this stuff up. All the women are making stuff up. They're all Democrat plants, which is funny because most of them voted for Trump and are strident Republicans. Nonetheless, he's going to go with that, despite the fact that it's easily provable to be wrong. But anyway, so he could win, right? And if he does, well, there's a lot of Republican senators that are not sure what they're going to be able to do. Now, Senator Cory Gardner, who came out the strongest, demanded that Moore step down or be removed from the legislature if he were to win. He's like, no, we're done with this. We're not going to have you in Congress. If the Alabama voters put you here, we will remove you. And we can actually do that using certain rules. So, look, man, step down or you will be replaced. That's very, very strong. Others are a little less strong on this, and they're not saying that they'd explicitly vote to remove him if he were to win. For example, you have Suzanne Collins. Now, she said, I took the time to listen. If he does, we will have to face that issue if he's elected. I think it's premature to talk about expulsion of someone who hasn't even been elected. Now, I believe she later on said, look, if he gets voted in, he's kind of here. So I don't think there's really anything that we can do about it. Now, I know that Roy Moore, he's not dropping out. I know the guy's type, right? This is a guy who's going to fight to the end, especially since it looks like he could actually win this thing. And I think he will. Sorry, I have this cynical streak going on, and I am fairly certain that Alabama voters, they're going to choose the worst kind of person. That's how messed up this really is. But earlier I mentioned something about rules, right? Well, Collins told reporters, by the way, of which the Senate could remove someone, right? Now, this would fall under the Ethics Committee and whether or not Roy Moore would be fit for office. And to be fair, he has been removed from office twice as a judge. So, it's possible that if he were to win, they could initiate this process. Would they? Well, that's a different question. Now, Collins had also suggested that, hey, man, look, let's not talk about that yet. In her previous statement, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Okay. Quote, but it seems to me we're getting way ahead of ourselves. What I would like to see is for Mr. Moore to immediately step aside. Now, Ted Cruz also told a Tribune reporter on Monday, quote, as it stands, I can't urge the people of Alabama to support a campaign in the face of these charges without serious persuasive demonstration that the charges are not true. Senator Lindsey Graham told reporters, when the head of your own party's senatorial committee is advocating you be expelled before you get elected, I just don't think you have a very bright Senate career ahead of you. Let's see. To expel somebody, don't you have to listen to both sides of the story? So I don't know. I hope he steps aside. I don't see a good outcome for Mr. Moore. Tom Tillis in North Carolina said, quote, That is a hypocritical and, or I'm sorry, that is a hypothetical, and then we'll have to get to that after the election if he wins on removing him. And then you also have Majority Whip John Cornyn, who earlier withdrew his endorsement of Moore, said, quote, "There hasn't been an election yet, so it's hard to expel a senator who wins an election that hasn't been held." So you kind of see where they're going, right? Well, if he wins, then we'll have to figure out something later. I mean, Senator Richard Shelby said, quote, "He's got to make his own decision, but I'll tell you what, drip, 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 cut by cut, doesn't look good." Now, so again, those are most of the senators going, look, man, we'll have to see, right? Let's hope that Alabama voters do not vote for this guy, because then we're going to actually have to do something. And I don't know what doing this, I don't know what we're going to do. We could remove him, but then what's the blowback? Then I'll get to that. Now, there was one senator that broke with Gardner, and that's Orrin Hatch, who, when asked by Business Insider, said, quote, "No, I don't agree with that, but it depends on what the facts are, not just what any person thinks. I'm very concerned about these problems, but I think we've got to handle them with deliberation and care." So this kind of goes back to what I was saying before. Republican politicians are afraid of the base. I mean, that's simple, right? Now, if the base rebukes Moore by not voting for him, either you stay home or you write in a candidate, or I don't see a lot of them voting for Doug Jones. Sorry. It's going to be pretty easy for these Republican senators, because then they can come out and say, "Look at that. We did the right thing the whole time. Aren't you proud of us?" But look, a lot of them are super hesitant to call for removal if Moore does get voted in, and that could be a big problem. I mean, if Alabama voters vote for this guy, it tells these senators that even an accused child molester is now acceptable to them, as long as they're a Republican and as long as they hold certain anti-establishment views, which is basically anybody who's against Mitch McConnell, who is incredibly unpopular. I could be wrong. Look, Alabama voters, prove me wrong. Maybe there's got to be enough people there with a sense of decency. I don't know. I mean, look, we're far beyond Roy Moore's politics at this point, which, again, are abhorrent to begin with. But that's not even the worst part anymore. He is a predator. Preyed on teen girls. I mean, look, think of your daughters, right? Is that the kind of person that you want representing you? Somebody's going to try to date your teen daughter. Look, Alabama voters, you don't have to vote for a Democrat. Just write somebody in. Or just sit this one out. Just whatever you do, don't send this kind of guy to the Senate. Okay. I know I'm trying to talk sense into very, very conservative voters. I got to try, man. I got to try. Okay. Moving on. Oh, this is a surprise. Just days after Hannity cheered on his fans for smashing their coffee machines in a show of defiance in favor of Roy Moore, Sean Hannity has had a sudden change of heart. Shortly after Keurig and other companies pulled their ads over Hannity's defense of Moore, and after numerous videos of Hannity fans smashing their own stuff, he did a segment urging people to stop. Watch.
Now, please, I'm calling for a ceasefire here. I humbly appreciate your support, but I'm asking you to not smash your Keurig. And I must admit, these videos this weekend, I watched and I laughed. They are hysterical. Watch this.
This is what I think of you, Keurig.
of that was done to support my ability to continue to do this show every night. I am beyond humbled. Now, as I said, I own 5 Keurigs. Please stop destroying yours. And by the way, for the people who did, later this week I have a big announcement. I will be giving away 500 coffee makers. Now, I'll decide on the brand that I'll be giving away in the coming days based on how things unfold.
Okay, I will never not be amused by watching conservatives destroy stuff that they actually own, that they paid money for. Hilarious, right? And here's Sean Hannity going, oh, I laughed right alongside you guys as you destroyed your own stuff. Wonderful. Even Hannity's laughing at you. But anyway, look, the idea that they took that stuff that they bought and smashed it. Also, Hannity can come out and say, oops, oh, hey, don't do that. I own 5 Keurigs, guys. I didn't go out and smash my Keurigs. Tamp it down. Cut it out. Cut it out. We kind of need that ad money. And look, to be fair, Keurig isn't running ads anymore. And what they apologized for, and he made a big deal about this in his segment. They came out and apologized. No, what they apologized for is for making it public. They were going to pull the ads anyway. They just shouldn't have done it through their Twitter account. At least that's what they're arguing, right? We're sorry we came out so publicly and said we're going to pull ads from you. We were going to do it anyway. We just shouldn't have told you. Because then, oh, look at that. We've got a blowback. So here's the thing, right? So now, Hannity is not done yet since we're pretty sure he works for the advertisers, right? But he is also starting to see that what Moore has done is indefensible. He's trying to defend the indefensible, right? Now, that 5th accuser was actually more than enough to convince Hannity to decide to give him a little bit of an ultimatum. Now, this, of course, is Beverly Young Nelson. Now, at the time when she was just 16, Moore, who was a regular patron at a restaurant, offered her a ride home from work. Now, she got in the car, and he decided not to take her home, but instead go around the back of the restaurant in a dark area and tried to grope her, tried to take her shirt off, tried to force her head into his crotch, all that horrific stuff, right? Now, she said, quote, I was alarmed and I immediately asked him what he was doing. Instead of answering my questions, she said, Mr. Moore reached over and began groping me and putting his hands on my breasts. I tried to open my car door to leave, but he reached over and locked it. She said, I thought he was going to rape me. I was twisting and I was struggling and I was begging him to stop. Eventually, she said, Moore decided to give up. He told me, quote, you're just a child. I'm the district attorney of Etowah County, and if you tell anyone about this, no one will ever believe you. Huh. So, yeah, that situation, look, already the molesting a 14-year-old, super indefensible, right? There's no defense of that. That wasn't where Hannity, that was not the tipping point for Hannity. This apparently was. I know, right? Republican morals. But look, here's the thing, right? I'm kind of speculating here, but maybe one of the reasons that Roy Moore allegedly went after teen girls is that he had a power dynamic over them, and that if he did anything like that, well, they wouldn't believe him anyway. To be fair. Okay. But anyway, now Hannity was like, oh, man, so I saw this, and there was corroboration and all sorts of stuff. Oh, crap. Not only that, but these are Trump voters, so it's not political in nature. This actually did happen. Now I need to change my tune. And on Tuesday's show, he decided that he was going to give Moore a little bit of an ultimatum. Let's watch.
Between this interview that I did and the inconsistent answers, between him saying, I never knew this girl, and then that yearbook comes out. For me, the judge has 24 hours. You must immediately and fully come up with a satisfactory explanation for your inconsistencies that I just showed. You must remove any doubt. If you can't do this, then Judge Moore needs to get out of this race.
Oh, damn. Oh, whoa. Oh, Judge Moore needs to get out of this race if he doesn't have undeniable proof that these are unfair allegations. All right, so look, now you might be expecting me to give Hannity a little bit of credit, right? For sort of walking away from more. No, that's not going to happen. Why? Because that is literally the lowest bar that you can set. You cannot go any lower. Especially when some of Hannity's past defenses for more, including, of course, the old lie that a lot of women just, you know, allege sexual harassment in order to get something. Well, gee, what are they getting? What is to be gained by, you know, alleging sexual harassment? I mean, I guess a lot of things you're going to gain are death threats, but I don't know what else you get. Look, in a majority of these cases that keep getting brought up now, there's no money involved. There's no payoff here. There's actually far more negative consequences for coming out for these women than there are of anything else. So what are they getting? That doesn't make any sense. And at one point, before he decided to walk it back, he said that this relationship with Lee Korfman, the 14-year-old, was consensual. It was not. She was 14. The age of consent in Alabama was 16 at the time. That is completely indefensible. He realized it and was like, oh shit, I gotta walk it back. Now, Hannity's awfulness aside, this entire situation looks really, really bad for Roy Moore. I mean, when you start to lose Hannity, well, then you're in a bad situation. And look, it's not because the base is pushing back either. No. Among voters polled, Moore still leads the race by 6 points. This entire thing, Hannity walking back, is nothing more than him trying to appease the advertisers. Look, if you don't have advertisers on cable news, you don't have a show. You don't have money. And what's Sean Hannity concerned about? Money. It's the money. Keurig still is not doing ads. They still pulled their ads from Hannity, despite that, of course, somewhat apology for going public with it. He's like, man, we got to get these advertisers back. And it's not just Keurig. There was a lot of other companies that pulled their ads from Hannity over this. So now you're seeing Hannity decide to go, hey, man, look, maybe I was wrong about this. Please come back. By the way, did I tell you that I own 5 Keurigs? And that thing at the end of the first video that he said, I've got 500, I've got 500 coffee makers I'm going to give away. This is a signal to the advertisers. Hey, man, look, if you come back, Keurig, then I'm going to buy 500 coffee makers and give them away to my audience. Please come back. Please, I'm begging you, come back. We need that money. Look, if you have any questions about who Sean Hannity really works for, I think that should probably answer it. Okay. All they care about is money, man. They're giant corporations. What do you expect? All right. Well, let's move it. Let's move on, I should say. Okay. Now, the GOP tax plan apparently has a lot of CEOs excited about the potential windfall of millions of dollars in savings. Now, Republicans claim that these savings will make these corporations create jobs, that they need these tax cuts because we're so uncompetitive and we've got to create more jobs. Now, look, that's been debunked about 1 million times. Again, tax cuts for the rich do not have any correlation on job creation or economic growth. In fact, I've got data that backs me up, which they do not have. A recent study by the Nonpartisan Congressional Research Service examined tax rates and economic growth since World War II. You know what they found? Changes over the past 65 years in the top marginal rate and the top capital gains rate do not appear correlated with economic growth. The reduction in the top statutory tax rates appears to be uncorrelated with saving, investment, and productivity growth. The top tax rates appear to have little or no relation to the size of the economic pie. There's another study published in the New York Times, which analyzed 92 different publicly held American corporations that reported a profit in the United States every year from the years 2008 to 2015, and had a corporate rate of less than 20%. Now, that's interesting because that's exactly where the Trump GOP plan wants to bring corporate taxes down to. They're at 35% right now. They're like, no, we have to lower it to 20 so we can be competitive. Well, these 92 companies already pay that low rate. So what did they find? Well, they found that these 92 consistently profitable firms were not, I repeat, not among the nation's strongest job creators. In fact, the complete opposite happened. The companies that the Institute for Policy Studies had reviewed had a median job growth rate of, over the past 9 years, of nearly a -1%. That is compared with 6% for the entire private sector. Of those 92 companies, 48 got rid of a combined total of 483,000 jobs. At the companies that cut jobs, the chief executive's pay averaged nearly $15 million compared with $13 million average for S&P 500 companies. Those same companies ended up spending millions for stock buybacks, which of course does nothing to help jobs, but it does help raise executive pay as it makes the company actually look more valuable than it really is. So now it's no surprise that few CEOs, when asked, admitted to planning to invest into their companies if these tax cuts go into effect. Now, I've got a video here from a Wall Street Journal CEO Council meeting with Gary Cohn. Let's go to that video.
If the tax reform bill goes through, do you plan to increase investment, your company's investment, capital investment? Just a show of hands, the tax reform goes through? Okay.
Why aren't the other hands up?
Why aren't the other hands up? I saw like 3 hands in a room full of people. Why? Well, it's because they never planned on actually creating jobs. Look, these corporations do not need to invest in their companies. That's why they're not going to. There is just not enough demand to justify hiring more people, investing more in your company. Look, if it has to do with money, they've already got all the money in the world. In fact, they could hire thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people. Why? But why don't they? It's because they don't actually need more people. Look, if you really want these companies to actually create jobs, well, maybe we should ensure that workers have money to spend. Turns out when people have money in their pockets, regular working people, they spend that money. That stimulates demand. I know it's a simple concept, right? But they don't get it. Look, maybe the fix to that is, again, boosting worker pay, but also putting in higher marginal tax rates that kick in if you decide not to invest in your company by hiring workers or expanding their pay. I mean, sure, you can give companies tax breaks, you can give them incentives, but they've got to have some strings on them. Like, you either show that you can create jobs or you boost pay for your already, for your workforce that's already working, or you don't get it. You don't get any special rates. You don't get any special things. Nothing. Dick. That's maybe what I would do. If you're not creating jobs or you're not boosting pay, you're not helping the economy grow, and you don't deserve nothing. But see, here's what we know. We know what this is about. Republican donors, they want more of the pie. And what they're doing is that they're pushing to get their taxes cut. And and they've used a lot of stupid arguments. Here's one of the newest ones that they're using. They argued that slashing the corporate tax rate would actually increase regular household income for regular people. In fact, Kevin Hassett, the chair of the Council of Economic Advisors, said on a call last month that the main reason why cutting corporate tax rates would boost wages is because doing so would make it less expensive for companies to invest in capital assets, such as machines. He said, more assets like machines let workers produce more, and where workers can produce more, businesses can afford to pay their workers more. Oh, no, that relies on supply. That's trickle-down supply-side bullshit economics. That doesn't work. When those workers have more money, then they can go and buy more, and then, of course, these companies will need to produce more to keep up with that demand. Again, this is simple, right? The situation that he lays out doesn't happen, and it will never happen. And these CEOs overall, if there's not enough demand, then they do not plan to invest. even if they get more and more tax cuts, even if the corporate rate is set to 10%, 2%, or 0%. That's not going to create more jobs. It is a lie. It's a damn dirty lie. Okay? And Gary Cohn over here wants to pretend that he's shocked that these CEOs will not create jobs if given massive tax cuts. Because that's never been the purpose of this tax bill. The purpose has always been to give more money to the rich and powerful at the expense of everyone else. All right. I'm going to take a quick break here. Stay right here. We'll be right back. We got more show for you guys today, so stick around. We'll be right back. Hey everybody, welcome back. Run the Nation, right here, TYT Nation. I'm your host, Jeff Waldorf. If you could give us a like and share, please. That helps out the show. No super chats, no tweets or anything like that. So we'll move on with the story. We got more tax stuff. And then, like I said, we're going to have fun at the end. All right. Now, if you thought the House tax cut bill was bad, wait till you get a load of the new revised Senate version of the bill. Now, The Hill is reporting that the Senate Finance Committee Chairman Orrin Hatch has now released a modified version of the Senate tax bill on Tuesday that includes two changes. The previously announced elimination of the Obamacare of individual mandate and a sunsetting of individual tax rates in 2025. Now, interesting timing on that. Oh, we just happened to release this late Tuesday night, early morning. Oops. I mean, it's kind of late. Hopefully nobody picks up on this. Now, some people did pick up on this, and boy, is it bad. Now, The Hill explains that the sunset clause in Hatch's modified mark would mean the new individual rates in the Senate would end 10 years after their creation. And there is a reason that they put this in, by the way, and I will get to that in a minute. Now, the Senate bill also reduces the corporate tax rate from 35 to 20%. And again, this would be permanent. There is no sunset provision. Corporate taxes once they're down to 20%, they're never going to expire. Wonderful. Now, on Monday, Hatch hinted that the temporary individual tax cuts were on the table, emphasizing that he wanted to ensure that business tax changes were permanent, so you can see exactly who he's looking out for. Now, the individual rates, the larger standard deduction, and the child tax credit also are among the provisions that are set to expire. So, now I mentioned the reason, right? So, why do they have these individual tax cuts and the child tax credit and all that stuff that actually helps regular people? Why does that expire, but why not the corporate taxes? Well, the reason the Hill gives is this expires because it has to prevent the overall tax bill from adding to the deficit after 10 years. Now, already, it's been, I can't think of that word. The CPO has said that this tax bill will cost about $1.7 trillion. It'll add that much to the deficit. So their original $1.5 trillion estimate is completely off. Now, the other reason that they want to do this is because they want to use these budgetary rules to try to shove this through on a party line vote. Now, right now, they only have 52 senators, so they're using budget reconciliation again to try to push this. All they need is a 50-vote majority, or I'm sorry, simple majority. So that's how they're trying to push this and why. Okay, now there is that first thing that I mentioned, is the elimination of the individual mandate. So I want to go into that. That's pretty problematic. Well, for one, look, I know it's not popular, right? I'm going to have to pay the tax at the end of the year. I don't have health insurance. I didn't buy from the private market. There's been so much fluctuation going on and all that stuff. It's like, I don't know. I don't know if insurance is going to be there. So yeah, I'm going to end up paying the penalty, and that sucks. But nonetheless, there's a reason that it's there, right? Without that mandate being enforced, without that penalty, the ACA ends up going into a crazy death spiral. That's not good. Now, that will, of course, end up costing millions of people their insurance, as rates will go up for people who have pre-existing conditions, who need medical treatment. So, again, that's super, super terrible for millions of people. Not only that, but like I said, if Obamacare gets sabotaged, which this is what's looking like, and also all the other stuff that Trump has done and rolled back, well, if they sabotage it enough, they can actually get the votes to eliminate it. And that just will equal a giant tax cut for rich people. So that's what this is all about. And add on to that the taxes that will go down for corporations. And on the other side, the taxes that will, the individual rates that will expire in 2025, the expiration of the child tax credit, the standard deduction, all that stuff. Well, that means taxes and tax breaks on the middle class are going to go away by 2025, while corporations still reap all the reward, all the profit. I think it's fairly clear who this tax bill and who this modification actually benefits. This is a signal to the donors like, hey, man, well, we're still pushing for you. We're on your side, donors. So keep signing those checks, man, because we're going to try and push this through. Now, there's one more piece of this bill that makes it even worse. I haven't even gotten to the worst part, right? And again, we already have those, the child tax credit that's going to go away, and the individual rates, the tax cuts that you would get as a regular person, as somebody in the middle class, those go away by 2025, which actually sets us up for another fiscal cliff type of fight, which, again, that's going to cause some serious problems. And once you give a tax cut to the rich, man, it's really hard to roll that back. So, again, that's not even the worst part. Here's the worst part. Now, we know that the Republican tax plan would add about $1.5 to $1.7 trillion to the federal deficit over the next 10 years. Now, according to something called the Statutory Pay-As-You-Go Act, or otherwise known as PAYGO, it would force immediate cuts in spending to offset this reduced revenue. The new debt must be offset, or PAYGO requirements must be waived. So there are these rules in the Senate where you cannot have this debt. You've got to offset it. Now, if PAYGO is not waived, and it can be waived, and I'll tell you how, if it's not waived, it will end up triggering automatic cuts in other programs. And again, we already had this happen in fiscal cliff. Okay. Now, a letter from the CBO said that the cuts in 2018 would total $136 billion. So immediately, that PAYGO, if they can't figure it out, or if they don't waive specific programs, PAYGO goes into effect, and you've got $136 billion in cuts. And that's just a small estimate. It's a conservative estimate. Now, sit down for this one, right? This would include slashing the budget to core programs like Medicare. The CBO said that the PAYGO would force a cut of $25 billion from Medicare, the maximum amount allowable, and then other cuts totaling between $85 and $90 billion from other programs like Border Patrol, the Federal Student Loan Program, and farm subsidies. So, it's a win-win for them, policy-wise, because then, or I should say politically, or maybe not, because Medicare is incredibly popular. But if they can foist it on the Democrats, well then that might be a political win, but definitely a policy loss. So what we're seeing here is, oh, look, we can't help it. PAYGO went into effect. We're going to have to cut Medicare and your student loans. Also that the rich people, these corporations, can still get their tax cuts. Wonderful. And now, again, you can have a waiver, right? However, as Business Insider explains, it's not very easy to get that waiver. The PAYGO waiver would not qualify for reconciliation consideration and would need at least 60 votes, meaning the Republicans would have to get the Democrats to sign on to that waiver. So, and that's going to end up being a big political fight going forward. So, again, if you thought the House version was bad, the Senate version has shown that it's so much worse and triggers more automatic cuts in programs that are vitally necessary to the American people. Again, also corporations and the rich can end up getting their tax cuts that never sunset, that never go away. If you don't know who this tax bill benefits by now, then you're not paying attention. Okay. Another tax-related story. I know, right? We're filled with policy today. Now, we know the Republican tax plan is an enormous giveaway to the rich, right, and corporations. Now, this plan, though, surprisingly, the one surprising part of this plan is actually the people who are against it. That includes some rich people. Now, according to the Washington Post, more than 400 American millionaires and billionaires are sending a letter to Congress this week urging Republican lawmakers to not cut their taxes. Wow. Now, this is the wealthy Americans, including doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs, and chief executives, forming a group called Responsible Wealth, say the GOP is making a mistake by cutting taxes in the richest families at a time when national debt is high and income inequality is at the worst level it's been since 1920. Now, the letter calls on Congress not to pass any tax bill that further exacerbates inequality and adds to the debt, which unfortunately for the GOP is all their tax plan does. It just gives more to the rich and adds more to the debt. You know, it's always funny when Republicans, when there's a Democratic president, right? Republicans are like, oh my God, the debt and the deficit. Look how much you're adding to the debt. And now they're looking at 1.7, at least $1.5 trillion adding to the deficit. And they're like, ram it through. Let's ram this thing fast. Get it through, get it through. We don't even want a CBO score on it. Go, go, go. We want to vote on it. We want it on President Trump's desk so we can get it done. But wait, I thought you guys cared about the deficit. I thought you guys cared about the debt. Yeah, I know. Dynamic scoring, which is a bunch of horse shit. But anyway, now, the letter instead calls on Congress to raise taxes on rich people like them. So here we have the millionaires, or at least a group of millionaires, saying, hey, you know what? We're already fantastically wealthy. We don't need another tax cut. So let's not go that way. In fact, we want to give you money. Wow. Republican heads are exploding right now, by the way. Now, again, as I mentioned, this letter was put together by Responsible Wealth. Now, that is a group that advocates for progressive causes. I love them already. Signers include Ben & Jerry's ice cream founders Ben Cohen and Jerry Greenfield, fashion designer Eileen Fisher, billionaire hedge fund manager George Soros. Oh, my God. Oh, my God, Soros. Alert, I've triggered a bunch of conservatives. Heads exploded. Just have to mention that. Steve Rockefeller. Oh, my God, the Rockefellers, too. They're in on this conspiracy to cut taxes or to raise taxes on the rich. That really doesn't happen to fit in with their narrative, does it? But anyway, now there are also many individuals and couples who are part of the top 5%, which is ranges from 1.5 million in assets or earning 250,000 or more per year. So there's a lot of people, a lot of affluent people, and some millionaires and billionaires as well, that are like, hey, man, look, we can't keep going the way that we're going. Something's going to give, something's going to break, and we really don't want to be around here when it does. We actually want to solve the problem before people start coming out with the pitchforks. Just saying. All right. Now, among these people is Bob Crandall. Now, Bob Crandall is a former American Airlines chief executive who lives in Florida and has added his name to the letter. He said, quote, I think a tax cut is absurd. Republicans are saying we can't afford to spend money, but we can afford to give rich people a huge tax break. That makes no sense. Now, of course, the White House has been fighting against that narrative, that it's and saying that no, it's primarily a middle class tax cut. But as numerous studies have shown, and people that have just looked at the bill, we've seen that the lion's share of the benefits of this tax plan end up going to very, very wealthy people. It is a tax cut for the rich. It doesn't matter what you say about it. The numbers don't lie. Now, Gary Cohn, in trying to push back, and he's Trump's Treasury Secretary, or not Treasury Secretary, sorry, that's Mnuchin, who's also been pushing for this. But Gary Cohn is an economic advisor to Trump, and he said, quote, I don't believe that we've set out to create a tax cut for the wealthy. If someone's getting a tax cut, I'm not upset that they're getting a tax cut. Everything in our tax system is meant to encourage investment. Now, that is not true. Just yesterday, Cohn was told by CEOs that they don't actually plan on investing anything. In fact, I've got that video.
If the tax reform bill goes through, do you plan to increase investment, your company's investment, capital investment? Just a show of hands, the tax reform goes through? Okay.
Why aren't the other hands up?
Because they're not going to invest in anything. This giant tax cut is not going to create economic growth. It's not actually going to create jobs. It's not going to spur and encourage investment. And the guy wants to act surprised. No, not a surprise. In fact, Crandall said, quote, I have a big income. If my income gets bigger, I'm not going to invest more. I'll just save more. Yeah, that's what they do. This isn't rocket science here. Look, if you've got a ton of money, right? If you've got more income, like 10, 12 times more income, coming in than it is going out for regular living expenses, then what are you going to do? You're going to save most of it, right? Every once in a while, you go out and buy a new car or buy a yacht, but most of that money ends up sitting in your bank account. You're not going to do anything with it because you don't really need to. This isn't going after the rich for being greedy. It's just pointing out basic logic. Most rich people are not going to spend a majority of that money. Now, if you're working class, well, that's different. You're going to spend most of that money on survival. You're going to buy things once in a while. You're going to spend it on like food, rent, car insurance, healthcare, education, student loans, that kind of stuff, right? And you're going to spend a majority of your money. You're not going to be able to save very much. Now, that presents other problems, but nonetheless, you know, that's why working people actually need a raise. Working people need to actually make more money and be able to save more money. And that's why, of course, these government programs like universal health care and college that's tuition free is actually incredibly helpful to the middle and working class. But anyway, signers of this letter say that since corporations are already at record profit levels and that wealthy people don't need any more money, we should have the government tax them and use the funds to invest in some of those things that I mentioned earlier: education, healthcare, research, roads, and to ensure that safety net programs such as Medicaid, Medicare are not cut. And of course, that makes all the sense in the world. Again, these government programs actually do a lot to reduce income inequality and actually help people get a chance to get out of poverty. Not only that, but, you know, people can get a good education with government help with things like student loans. But would actually get a lot more help with universal, free college. And these people could actually go out and start their own businesses and be successful and hire more people and become job creators. That's what we want. We want people to be successful, but we want to give people the tools. But if rich people hoard all the money and don't spend all the money, don't put it back in the economy, that actually reduces people's upward mobility. That reduces the resources that we can collectively spend on investing in the next generation. That's a huge, huge problem, right? Now, the Republican tax plan, yes, it cuts taxes for the middle class a little bit, but again, the lion's share goes to the rich. What they're doing, especially with the changes to the estate tax, is that they're really fueling more dynastic wealth. So they're creating these rich families that will continue to have, their descendants will continue to have more and more of that wealth for years and years, decades and decades, hundreds of years, if we survive that long. So now, the estate tax, is, like I said, I mentioned, they specifically in this letter call that out. Now, if you didn't know already, the estate tax, or the death tax as conservatives love to call it, is actually only paid on assets worth more than $5.49 million or $11 million for couples. Now, that is left to heirs, right? Now, the House bill would eliminate that tax entirely. Gone. The Senate bill would double the threshold so that people can inherit up to $11 million or $22 million tax-free. Now, at the moment, let me tell you how many people this affects in the entire United States. Over 300 million people, right? Only 5,000 Americans a year end up paying the estate tax. And under the Senate plan, that would actually drop to about 1,800 families. Now, this is according to a report on the Joint Committee on Taxation. Now, repealing the estate tax would alone lose an estimated $269 billion over 10 years. That's the impact. More than we would spend in the Food and Drug Administration, the Centers for Disease Control, and Environmental Protection Agency combined, according to the letter. So now, Mike Lapham, who inherited his own wealth, right? So this is a guy who benefited from dynastic wealth. He said, quote, "This has to be one of the few times members of Congress have been visited by people saying, 'Don't give me a tax cut.'" Now, he actually directs the Responsible Wealth Project at United for a Fair Economy. So again, this is a guy who got his wealth from his family, and he's like, "Look, I got this. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't be taxed. We did not earn that money. We got lucky playing the genetic lottery. So why should we get a special break on money that we didn't actually earn when there are people out there going hungry, when there are people out there that can't afford their student loans, when there are people out there that can't afford health care? That's not fair in America. We can actually do something about it. Please tax us more. Amazing. In fact, wealthy people are saying we just don't need this tax cut. Now, how much more clear can it be? Look, the people don't want this tax bill, and now there are millionaires and billionaires out there that also do not want this bill. So who does? Well, there are certain billionaires out there that donate a lot to Republican and Democratic politicians to make sure that their taxes never go up. Now, it's obvious that the responsible millionaires, or hopefully I said that's right, responsible wealth, the people that are part of this group, are not cutting checks to the Republican Party. But somebody is. Somebody whose greed overshadows everything. That they're willing to spend so much money, millions and millions of dollars on ads and on politicians so they can avoid paying taxes. Now, these are people like the Koch brothers, Sheldon Adelson, and, of course, the Mercer family, which bankrolled both Ted Cruz and Donald Trump during the election. These are the people that don't like government. These are the people that are trying to destroy government, all so that they can get more and so that you can get less. That's what this game is about. And it's glad to have a few billionaires of our own to push back against them. Okay. One more here. Now, one of President Trump's judicial nominees is raising a few eyebrows for his after-hours hobbies. Now, there's actually plenty to raise your eyebrows about this guy, but this is 36-year-old Brett Talley. Now, he was recently appointed for a lifetime post as an Alabama federal judge. Now, there were other articles about this guy that point out that he's got apparently zero experience in being a judge. He's never tried a case before, so that seems a little problematic. There's also information that's come out where he has failed to disclose a conflict of interest questionnaire that his wife happens to be a lawyer in the White House. Super problematic. In fact, according to the BBC, the Harvard-educated lawyer was also unanimously deemed as not qualified by the American Bar Association to serve at this appointment. However, he is going to end up being put there anyway. Now, Mr. Talley has also practiced law, or since he's only practiced law for about 3 years, right? But he is also a right-wing blogger, and he has made blog posts of both Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama that were fairly negative. Okay, so now that's who this guy is. All right, super unqualified, has some conflicts of interest, and definitely is a super right-wing conservative judge. Now, that's the important stuff. Here's the fun stuff. What's fun about this is that not only is he incredibly unqualified, but he also happens to write horror novels and do paranormal investigations. Now we're having fun. Right up my wheelhouse. In a questionnaire form submitted to the Senate Judiciary Committee, Mr. Talley revealed in his 2009-10 affiliation with different ghost hunting groups. Now, according to the BBC, the Tuscaloosa Paranormal Research Group searches for the truth of the paranormal existence, in addition to helping those who may be living with paranormal activity that can be disruptive and or traumatic, according to their website. The group promises a strictly scientific approach to determine the extent of paranormal activity and offers its services for free. Not very conservative of you. Why are you not charging? Just asking. Just asking. So, okay. This is very interesting for me personally. Look, I'm a skeptic, right? I'm a scientific-minded person. However, I do have to admit that one of my guilty pleasures is watching paranormal stuff. I actually find it very interesting, very entertaining. I don't believe any of it, just to be clear, but I do find it very interesting. Another thing I find interesting is watching Ancient Aliens. I love it. I don't know why, but I love it. Again, guilty pleasure, right? So back to this guy, right? Now, David Higdon, the group's founder and later co-author of Haunted Tuscaloosa with Mr. Tally, told the Daily Beast that he could not recall any specific cases that they may have worked on together. Mainly, we may go into a house between maybe 7 at night and 6 in the morning and stay up all night long to see if we can see what's going on. If we go to into a private house, we mainly try to debunk what's going on. Now, that, of course, seems fairly standard if you've watched any ghost hunter shows. But again, okay, I'm very, very entertained by this whole thing. Now, I don't have a problem with Mr. Tally does or what he believes. If he believes in ghosts and goblins and all that stuff. I mean, maybe I'm thinking of Alex Jones here with the aliens and the goblins and all that stuff. But nonetheless, okay, God bless. If you have a belief in that and you want to do ghost hunting on your off hours, that's cool. Right. No, the only problem that I have with this guy is that he's never tried a case before and has been deemed unqualified to hold that position in which he was put into. It's sort of important to have experience. It's sort of important to be able to be qualified to be in that job because, you know, you have to know what you're doing. This position is not a ghost hunt where you can come in as an amateur, bring a couple of EVP devices and be like, hey, man, I'm just doing my job. No, you can't bumble into your job. Okay, you can't do that. So while it is fun to poke fun at his forays into the paranormal, again, I found it super interesting, which, by the way, include writing books. Now, one of his books is actually sort of Lovecraftian. I haven't read it, but yeah, it looks kind of interesting, actually. Who knows? It's been nominated for an award, so that's great. But it is actually fair to point out how, again, he's simply unqualified for the job that he has been appointed into and has major conflicts of interest. So, again, look, maybe the guy should, you know, stick to doing paranormal investigations. I'd probably certainly watch one of those shows, but not interested in him being a judge in Alabama. So I don't know what they're doing, but they're doing it wrong. Okay. That's it. That's all I got for you guys today. Thank you for going around the nation with me today. Thank you for watching and supporting the show. Ron Picone, tomorrow, we'll have him back on the show. That's going to be exciting. We'll be going over some DNC corruption. So if you missed us going after the Democrats, just you wait. We're back. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks for supporting the show. Love you guys. We'll see you tomorrow. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, TYT Nation.